Well, amen. As our men come forward, we're going to take up our offering, and as they do so, I want us to be in prayer for a family. We had a man that did a lot of air-conditioned work for us over the years. He was a small business owner, and he worked by himself. It's amazing the work that he could do, and he replaced quite a few air conditions for us here. His name was Mike Pruitt, and Mike passed away this weekend, and we want to pray for his family. He battled with cancer, and so we lift him up and lift his family up to the Lord at this time. Also, a lot of folks are sick. That bug is going around. It's in various forms. For me, I got it this week. Just an old-fashioned cold. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? You say, how do you know? I know. I know what I know. And so I'm much, much better. Thank you for praying for us. But Penny's down with it now, and other people around our fellowship has it, and it's been going around. So let me pray with you, and then we'll introduce the one who's going to bring the message today. Father, thank you for your blessings toward us. And as we take up this offering today, we are grateful for all that you have done in our lives, for so much that you have given us. As we go through this time of sickness, not just in our church, but in our community, and other churches are going through the same thing, and in our nation right now, we ask that your healing hand would be upon us, get us back to health so that we can serve you with everything that we have. These that we've mentioned, particularly the Pruitt family, may your mighty hand be upon them, and may they know your presence. We thank you for your goodness to us, and we pray it all in Christ's name. Amen. Amen. You all may be seated, everybody. So as the offering plates come around, let me remind you that you can give through Realm, or you can go online and go to our website, jbcnewberry.com and jonesvillebaptist.com. You can find us that way. And we'll tell you how you can give later. We're going to have a second offering, and we'll tell you about that at the end of the service today. So on July 3rd, I got up about this time, and I saw about where Micah Heron is sitting. Micah, raise your hand. Now, so right around that area, there was this man and these few other people that were here at the time. And he just had this big old smile on his face, and he was just smiling away. And we made eye contact, and I'm like, oh, Lord, please help me remember this man's name. I know I've met him before, and I don't want to connect with him at the end of service and not be able to remember his name. Well, as it turned out, I didn't remember his name, and went to the back, and he came out, and I said, brother, I apologize to you. I know that we've met before. And he goes, no, we've never met. I went, what do you mean? And he's like, we've never met before. He goes, this is my first time here. And I went, really? Gosh, you look so familiar. And as it turned out, he mentioned his name to me, that his name was Ed Heaton. He was from Oregon. And now, it is Oregon, right? Not Oregon, right? Yeah, that's right. And as I got to know them, I found out that they're from this town called, they call it Terrebonne. Terrebonne, Terrebonne. Well, when they spelled it out for me, I went, that's not Terrebonne, that's Terrebonne. Terrebonne, as we say. We have Terrebonne Parish in Louisiana. We have Terrebonne General Hospital. And I've got family members whose last name is Terrebonne. And but they're from this little town in eastern Oregon called Terrebonne, near a larger town called Bend. And as we found out that Ed and his family were here because Ed needed a liver transplant. And as you all know, he got the liver transplant. I'm not going to tell too much more of the story because he's going to tell it. But as it turns out, they became part of our church, and the Lord has blessed, and the Lord has led me to invite Ed to come and share his story. He and Terry have an amazing story. We've gotten to know their family, gotten to appreciate them so much. And so, without further ado, Ed Heaton, come on and share with us the guy that was always smiling that I thought I knew. As it turns out, I did know him. And they're gonna throw up different pictures that you're gonna see as Ed speaks to give you an idea of his life. So let's welcome Ed to the pulpit of Jonesville Baptist Church. Ed Heaton. Amen, brother. Let me fix you up here. This thing's trying to go away from you. Whoops, I messed you up. Well, wait a minute. It's up at your eye now. We don't want to hear your eye. There you go. All right, brother. You got it. It's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? All right. If you can't, I'm sorry. Try and listen a little bit louder if you can. Okay, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Just walking up here 6 months ago would have been a real chore for me. It would have been a real difficult time, even just making it up the stairs. And I was thinking earlier, there's so much that I couldn't do 6 months ago. But one thing that I could do 6 months ago that I'd ask you to join me with is to pray. So would you pray with me this morning before we get started? Father in heaven, great and marvelous are your works, O Lord God Almighty. We praise you for those works. We thank you for your work in our lives. Thank you that you are the way maker. You are the one who interacts in our lives so many times in ways we don't see, in ways we don't understand, and sometimes in ways we can see. We're grateful for those. We're grateful for your involvement in our lives. Thank you. God, would you bless this time? I pray that your words would be heard. Anything of me would be forgotten. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. So some of this, I have to be honest with you, I plan to read because over the course of liver disease, end-stage liver disease, your memory goes. You don't remember a lot of what's happening. And my wife has been great to be able to help remind me of a lot of the things that have happened, a lot of the details. When my sister and my mom were out here, they took detailed notes of what was happening at different times, both in the hospital and each of the days leading up to it, and being able to read some of their notes has really been great for me because I didn't remember a lot of that stuff. There are so many procedures that happened and so many different times where somebody would say something, a doctor or a nurse or somebody like that would say something, and it was important, and I wouldn't remember. At this point, I can't remember. At the time, it was meaningful, and I understood. But standing here right now, I couldn't look back and remember those things were it not for their notes. So I'm grateful to them for that. But, as Pastor Corey mentioned, we were going to put up some pictures of where we come from, who we are, and there's a couple pictures of hospital excitement as well. Nothing crazy, nothing graphic, anything like that. But if you want to go ahead and bring up the first one there. So that's our house, actually, just about a month ago. You can see the snow falling. This is from the neighbor's house, looking over across the street at our place. And we do get plenty of snow in the summer. Usually it's one of those where it snows in the morning, blows off by noon, and everything's just fine. It's not a big deal. Go ahead. Roll to the next one. Just a couple minutes up the road, literally maybe 5 minutes up the road. We have our favorite hiking spot, Smith Rock State Park, and there's a nice 7-mile loop that I like to go and walk. But over the course of the last couple of years, I haven't had the strength to do that. It's been one of those things that, I'm looking forward to going back and being able to do some of those things, but I was not able to. Go ahead and go to the next one. And about 10 minutes the opposite direction, we've got a beautiful river running and some waterfalls. And I don't know if you can see, but you can see kids up there at the top that are about to jump in to the falls. And it's good excitement, but beautiful place. And here's the rest of the family. I'm not in that, but at Smith Rock, you can see my daughters from left to right with my wife on there. Lindsay and Serena and Danica, and always just a pleasure, a treat, hiking through the area with them. Another great picture of us out enjoying the outdoors together. It's one of those things. That's part of what we do. We're outdoors kind of folks. We enjoy getting out, going hiking, camping, those kinds of things. Yep, more just at that same spot. You can see kids back there behind us getting ready to jump in. We jumped in off of this cliff that's on this side. It's about 20 feet up and plenty deep, just deep enough to where when you land in the water and you sink down to the bottom, you can just barely touch the sand at the bottom with your toes and come back up. So when we came out here in May, um, Terry and I were driving around and we went out to Micanopy, and she got this picture of me looking all old man, looking down my glasses, as old man as I can get, and that's about as yellow as I got. One of the things with liver disease is you turn yellow. My eyes turned yellow, my skin turned yellow. You look kind of like you just went through a nuclear zone, and you just went yellow. And so that's probably the worst that I got. On the plane on our way out, you can see the difference in our skin complexion. Pretty dramatic. So this is day of transplant. I had just been transplanted. You can see my stomach right there, how much fluid was in me, how much extra blood was in me. I'm not sure exactly how much weight I gained over the course of it, but during the entire procedure, all of my the time that I was in the hospital from August 16th through September 22nd, I received 74 units of blood. That's a lot of blood. When you go and you give blood, you give one unit, essentially, right? So if we had 74 people here today who were going to give blood, that's what the equivalent of what they'd given me. My wife is actually trying to, over the course of I don't know how many years it'll take to meet 74 to try and give back to that. But over 190 procedures, almost 100 scans during that time. Go ahead and bring up the next one. So this is day after. Day after the procedure, they want you to be able to get up, get out of bed, and start gaining mobility. I have a scar now that starts here, goes down to here, about a foot, and then comes all the way over. It's a pretty massive incision. For them to be able to essentially cut you in half, pull out the largest organ inside of your body, stuff somebody else's in there, and then crudely staple you back together, right? I mean, that's kind of the way that it works. But they want you up the next day. So we got up, and this is the following day. They had me get up, get out of bed, and actually go for a walk. I think we made it about 20 steps down the hallway, but it was progress at that point. And it's one of those things that's necessary. Every step forward is exactly that. But just wanted to give you a little bit of of who we are, where we've come from, and what's happened. And you can see I'm not as yellow as I was that first Sunday on July 3rd. I think Don noticed the first Sunday that we were here, and he didn't mention this to me until maybe a couple weeks ago. He said, "Man, that guy's really sick. He's got something going on." And yeah, it's true. There was. As I think about it, oftentimes our setbacks are really setups for comebacks. And maybe you've heard something like that before, but throughout life, when you're coming up against those storms, those things can be setups for comebacks. And so many times, it's a matter of us recognizing where we're at, whether it be temptation, whether it be something in our own bodies, whether it be a relationship that's hurt or damaged. Sometimes those setbacks can be those setups for comebacks. And it's going to depend on our actions, our attitudes. It's going to depend on our faith. It's going to depend on what we do in those moments and how we're going to act and how we're going to respond. Because every one of us will face those. And some of us more often than others, and that's okay. But it's one of those things that we're going to face them, and how are we going to respond? My wife's family is a longtime 49er family. And I know, I'm sorry. Mom, I'm sorry if you're watching this. I'm not apologizing for your 49erness. It's okay. But you'll remember a few years back, maybe 20 years ago, famous quarterback Joe Montana. Everybody remembered him as Comeback Joe, right? So many times, they're down, and they've been down for a while, and it's coming down to the last play. There's nothing left. That bomb goes in. Of course, it's Jerry Rice that catches the ball, and and they win the game, right? It's those setbacks. It's those times where all the way along it feels like, what's going on? There's no way we're going to pull this off. It's those setbacks that are setups for the comebacks. Nobody remembers the loss. People remember those comebacks, right? Isn't that how it is in our lives too? When we're going through life and we have those setbacks, we don't remember the times that we didn't win usually. We remember those times where it was like, oh, God came through there. He came through for me in that spot. He was faithful to me there. I see that. I know that. And it's one of those things I just wanted to put that out there that, it's those setbacks oftentimes that are the setups for the comebacks. So I apologize. I'm going to read some of this because I don't remember a lot of it well. But I can tell you in 2002, I woke up one morning. I was getting ready to go to work at UPS and got ready to go. And I went into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I'm yellow. My eyes are yellow. Never seen that before. And like anybody, I'm a little bit freaked out. Why are my eyes yellow? I called for my wife, Terry, to come and take a look. And she's like, yep, those are yellow. Your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. And I was worried. I was concerned because my brother, a few years previous, had been diagnosed with a liver condition called primary sclerosing cholangitis. Basically what that means is inside your liver, you have a bunch of bile ducts, and they kink up like a hose, right? And that bile sticky stuff, it doesn't want to move, so it just kind of sludges up, and your liver becomes hard. It turns to cirrhosis. And it turns out that's what I was diagnosed with as well. In that same year, I was diagnosed with the primary sclerosing cholangitis and cirrhosis, and that was 2002. So over the next 20 years, it was a question of, okay, what are we going to do now? Now what's happening? And for most of that time, I didn't feel anything. I didn't notice anything. It was just day after day. Here we go, step by step. It's routine. We're just living life. So I turned yellow. My boss told me, hey, you know what? Go ahead and stay the rest of the day, but don't come back until you have a doctor's note saying you're okay, because everybody's kind of freaked out right now that you're yellow. That's weird. So so I go to the doctor a couple days later, and he sends me to a gastroenterologist. If you're not familiar with that is, it's a guy that he knows what's going on inside of your digestive system. All of those organs involved, liver, kidneys, spleens, pancreas, the intestines, and whatnot. So he gave the diagnosis, and shortly afterwards, my brother, this was also in 2002, he had his first liver transplant at OHSU up in Portland. And I remember walking into his room in the recovery in ICU and seeing him with all of these tubes coming out of him. He's fully intubated. He's got the breathing tube in, and he's struggling to breathe. He wants that tube out. And when you're intubated, oftentimes they'll tie you down so you don't pull the tube out, so you don't mess with it. And that happened with me as well after my surgery. But I was freaked out. I saw that, and I was like, what in the world is this? He's got somebody else's liver in him now, and he's fighting to breathe. He's fighting to stay alive. I never want that spot. Anything I can do to avoid that, that's what I'm going to do. Whatever it takes. I kind of sealed up inside and was like, you know what? Okay, if that's what's down the road, I don't want it, and there's got to be another way. There's got to be something. If we catch this early enough, we can do something. And at that time, I looked and I thought, there's no way he's going to have a normal life again. At the time, he wasn't married, and I thought, he's never getting married. He's never having kids. He's going to be on pills the rest of his life, and a lot of them. And I don't want that kind of life. I'm married, and at the time, shortly afterwards, I'll come back to that. I thought, he's never going to have a normal life. Turns out I was wrong. He did get married. He did have a son. His son's 9 years old now. And my brother went to be with the Lord about 3 years ago. And it was a miracle, though, his life. And one of the things that he did was he was a missionary with Child Evangelism Fellowship. I don't know if y'all have that out here, but they essentially go into schools and they set up clubs, and kids come to the clubs during school hour because there's an hour that's available for them to be able to go. And he would go and he'd share the gospel. He'd train other people to go and do the same thing. So he had started up clubs all over the Eugene Springfield area in the middle swath of the state, um, and it was fantastic. It was fantastic to watch, and there were a lot of kids that came to know the Lord through the ministry. Um, but I I was thinking, I don't want this kind of a life because I want to be able to live. I want to be able to do the things that I love to do. I want to be able to see my kids grow up. I want to be able to do all these things. But in 2003, our oldest daughter was born, and she was a bit of a miracle as well. We had been told a few months previous that, it's not likely you're going to have kids, all right, and you need to you need to be prepared for that. A few months later, it turns out Terry's pregnant, and baby's on the way. We were pretty amazed, and at the time we thought, we were living in Portland, and I thought, Portland's not the place that I want to be raising a family. So as any sensible man, I pull out a map of Oregon, and I start crossing off all the places I'm not willing to live. I get down, and there's 5 places left. So I start applying for jobs in all these different places, and one town, Bend, Oregon, had a position that seemed like it would fit, and so we moved to Central Oregon from Portland. So it's about 3 hours south and east of Portland, and moved to a little town called Terrebonne, just not far, home to about 700 people, and we've enjoyed it since. But in 2006, we were blessed with another miracle, our daughter Danica, and in 2012, we were again blessed with a third miracle, Lindsay, who's sitting over here today with us. At that same time, in 2003, when we moved to Central Oregon, I was referred to a new gastroenterologist, one that was there in Central Oregon, so I wouldn't have to make the drive up to Portland to go and visit the gastroenterologist that I knew there. I'd been prescribed some medication called ursodiol, and what it's supposed to do is mostly just smooth out the bile so that your body can process it. But that's great, right? I'm happy to do that. So I was reading one day in Investors Business Daily, a newspaper that's gone crazy since, but I read that the medication oftentimes has really bad side effects and makes the condition worse, specifically in patients with primary sclerosing cholangitis, which I had. So I would go to my gastroenterologist and say, hey, can you tell me what the downsides are of this medication? I haven't heard of anything yet from you. Can you tell me? He said, well, we don't really know. We don't really know of any. There's not really anything I can say. We just know it's really good. And so I said, I'm not really willing to be your lab rat. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to take that medication. And I stopped. And the relationship stopped between he and I. I didn't see him again. But at that same time, that same meeting, he said, you're going to be dead before you're 40. You're not going to make it to see 40 years. And I took issue with that, and I told him at the time, you're in no position to be able to say that to me. I don't believe it. There's one who numbers my days. There's one who knows how many days I have. He can extend them or shorten them as he pleases. But he's the only one who knows how many days I get, and it's not up to you to say. And, I was a little surprised to hear myself say that. I'm not normally the kind of person that's going to say something like that to somebody, a doctor much less, who's gone through how many years of study, I don't even know. And he had been a pioneer in the liver transplant process at the University of Pittsburgh in the 60s. But it felt like a death sentence to me. And I don't know if that's how he intended it, but that's the way it came across to me. Over the next 15 years, it was kind of okay, what now? Now what do we do? So I started reading, started exercising a lot more, started running, ran a marathon, enjoyed that. I know most people, it seems like more in the South, people are like, no, I don't really want to run. It's hot outside, and if you don't realize it's awfully humid out here, yeah, the sweat we feel out there is a little different than the sweat we feel out here when it's hot outside. Um, but um, I started doing a juicing regimen, a lot of fruit and vegetable juices, those kinds of things, and they helped. They really helped a lot. Um, drinking and drugs had never been a part of my life. It wasn't something that, the condition was caused by anything that I did. It's an autoimmune disorder that I didn't actively go and do anything that caused my cirrhosis. In most cirrhosis cases, something happened. Somebody did something. It was either the bottle or it was drugs, and that's the reality of it. But there are cases like mine and my brother's where we didn't really do anything. We were just going along, living life, doing the things that we thought the Lord would want us to do, and all of a sudden, here we go. Here's what we have. Now we get to work on it, right? Before I go much further, I do want to be careful not to over spiritualize anything that I'm going to say, and instead look at things first through a spiritual lens, but also there is a physical lens too, and there is a place where doctors are doing their job, and they're incredibly knowledgeable, and without their hands involved, things just don't happen. Without certain medications, certain things just don't happen. But oftentimes, too, we can look back and we see, okay, that was God that did that. There's no other explanation other than God did that. And I can tell you, over the course of the time here in Florida, I can look back. And over the course of 2020 specifically, I can look back and say, I was diagnosed with that, but God healed me. There's no other explanation for that. In 2011, one day I noticed a new mole on my arm, and Terry urged me to go to the dermatologist. So, of course, I went, and the dermatologist was concerned and said, let's cut that sucker off of there. Let's take a look, send it off to pathology. We'll let you know what happens. We'll reach back out for you. We were busy. We went off to California to go and visit Terry's dad, and when we got back, we're busy with life and didn't really think about it. And we didn't hear anything back, so assume no news is good news, right? We moved to Texas not too long afterwards, and after we moved back from Texas 2 years later, I went in to go and see the dermatologist, and they said, where have you been? You're supposed to be here every 6 months. You had cancer. I did. I didn't know that. Who was going to tell me? I thought y'all were going to give me a call back. You had melanoma. Really? Okay. All right. I'd seen the dermatologist in Texas, and they didn't see anything. They were happy with my condition. They did a couple other things for me, but I had no idea. But what would have happened, though, if they did call and they did say, hey, you know what, you've got melanoma. We want you to come in every 6 months. We think it might be further. We're going to go start testing everything. What would have happened? I don't know. I think maybe that the lack of a call was providential. I don't know. I mentioned we moved to Texas. In 2013, it became really apparent the company I was working for in Oregon wasn't going to make it. So I started looking for a job elsewhere, and found a couple places in Texas that were hiring for what I was doing at the time. I was in supply chain management, and there was a position at a company. And while I was down there interviewing with one company, another company called that was just down the street. They said, hey, when can you come out? Well, actually, they're all ready. When can I meet with you? They hired me. We moved to Texas. And it wasn't too long before that particular company started to do poorly as well. You come into work, and one of the vice presidents is gone. Their desk is clear. And it was a large company. There were 17 vice presidents, and by the time I left, there were 5. And each time it was, oh, they're gone. All right. So I moved to another place there in the Houston area, and I started to sense that I wasn't in the right place. I don't mean it from a work perspective. I mean, I felt like I wasn't doing necessarily what God wanted me to do. Like there was something more that He wanted me to be doing, and I didn't know what it was. And I was on my way to work one morning, and I stopped at a park on the way, and I prayed, Lord, I don't know what it is that you want me to do, and I really don't know what you want me to say or when, but God, would you close the doors that I'm not willing to close, and would you open the doors that I can't open? I drove to work, and not 30 minutes later, I got the news, Ed, we can't pay for you anymore. This is the end of the road. So I packed my box up, and on my way out, I messaged my boss. I sent him a text and said, hey, I want you to know that God used you today. I realize today's my last day here, and it was your decision. I know it wasn't an easy decision. But I prayed this morning that God would close doors that I was not willing to close, and this is one of them that I wasn't willing to close. And I trust that he's going to open a door at some point soon. And I don't know what that is, but I'm okay with that. I didn't hear anything back from him. But when I got home, as I was driving home, I was thinking, how am I going to tell Terry? How am I going to tell my wife that we moved out here from Oregon, out here to Texas? How am I going to tell her I don't have a job anymore? I don't know, maybe some of you have been in that spot before where you're driving home and you're like, how am I going to tell my wife or my husband I don't have a job anymore? Well, I prayed on my way home, and when I got home, of course, I told my wife, and she was a little upset. As I'm sure you can imagine, tears are coming down. And I gathered my 3 daughters. We came out, sat on the couch together, and I told them what happened. And I said, you know what? I think this is going to be an opportunity we're going to be able to look back and see what God has done. And let's pray, and let's ask God to be here in this moment with us. And we did. We got down on our knees, and we prayed together. And it's a time I won't forget, and I hope my daughters don't either. That was one of those times where we don't know what's next. We don't have an income now. What are we going to do? And, over the course of the next, 6 months probably, I had a couple of other opportunities to pick up some work on the side, and it was good. But at the time, it felt like, okay, Lord, what do you want us to do now? Now what? I felt like God was saying, hey, now's the time, go. Go where? Do what? I don't know. Well, we moved back home. In September of 2019, I went and I visited the doctor for some bleeding issues. And during that visit, I sat on the table, and he said, hey, what's up with your knees? I don't know. What do you mean, what's up with my knees? I'm sitting here on the table, and he says, your knees are huge. There's something going on in there. So I have no idea. I mean, I get up in the morning, I don't put my glasses on right away. I take a shower, and I get dressed in the dark. I don't really notice that my knees are big. And so he says, we're going to do some lab work. I'm going to send you over to the lab, have them draw some blood, send it off, and see what's going on. Gets the results back, and every one of the things that they tested was wrong, was off. Either way high or way low, one or the other. Nothing was in the normal. Nothing at all. He called me and said, hey, I want you to pack a bag and go to the hospital, because I made an arrangement with the hospital for you to be able to check in directly. Don't go through the ER, because we need to get to the bottom of this right away. And that's the best way to do that, is to have you in the hospital so they can run whatever tests necessary immediately. They can do whatever scans they need to do, administer whatever medications at whatever level immediately. So it's you don't know, my daughters had been going to school through Classical Conversations, which there's a Classical Conversations here at this church. Our daughter Lindsay is a part of that. But my wife at the time was a director, and so I gave her a call and said, hey, doctor just called and said, hey, go to the hospital. So I'm going to head on in. And she's like, speaking a little sense to me, why don't you call my mom and have my mom drive you in? Her mom just lives up the road from us. So I called up my mother-in-law, Jan, and she came, picked me up, drove to the hospital, got checked in. And over the next, I think it was 5 days, I was in the hospital. They did some further testing. They did a colonoscopy, and they're like, man, it's pretty angry up in there. You've got some problems, and you do definitely have advanced stage liver disease. And we need to take this seriously. Um, so as I laid there on the hospital bed, and maybe you've been at this spot too, where it takes something like laying in a hospital bed for God to get your attention, right? You have nothing else going on around you. Don't really have many other distractions. You're laying there, you're looking up. Okay, Lord, here we are. What now? And I heard him speaking to my spirit, saying, "Hey, it's time. You need to speak. You need to do something." And I didn't know what. I was like, "Okay, Lord, what is it that you want me to do?" Well, a friend of ours, he'd been doing some work with a organization called In Faith Ministries. They work with rural churches, small churches that have minimal budget, if a budget, and maybe a few families that are involved, 20 people, 30 people, maybe 50 or 100, but no more. And so he would go out to some of these churches. They don't always meet every week. Sometimes it's every other week. Sometimes it's just once a month that they get together. But he'd go out and speak to those folks. And he said, "Hey, I've got one up here in Antelope, little town of 70 people. Can you go and speak to this group for me on this Sunday?" So sure, happy to go. And over the next, I don't know, maybe 6 months, something along those lines, I did more of that. Went to a couple other towns, and I enjoyed it. And I started thinking, they had asked me to consider doing that full time, and I didn't think I could do it. I think I was responding out of fear that I was walking into something that I didn't know. I would need to go out and raise support. Is somebody going to support me? I'm not the kind that's going to go out and ask anybody to give me anything. That's not in my nature. I don't ask people for things. I want to be the guy that gives things to people. And that's kind of been my history. I'm not one that asks. I'm the one that wants to give. And I couldn't do it. I shouldn't say I couldn't do it. I didn't do it. I'd heard the voice of the Lord speak to my spirit saying, "Hey, now's the time." And I obeyed a little bit. But I don't think I obeyed completely. I think he wanted me to do more. And I'm a little ashamed to say it. And at the same time, business started to pick up for me. When we moved back from Texas, I started a business, a floor cleaning and restoration business. So working on tile and carpet and stone, concrete, those kind of things, cleaning them, restoring them, getting back looking great again. And business started to pick up right about that time too. So October of 21, I just recovered from a bout of COVID, and my thyroid medication had run out. I forgot to mention, in 2019, they gave me 3 diagnoses. The advanced stage cirrhosis, Crohn's, and Hashimoto's disease, or syndrome. And Hashimoto's is a thyroid condition where your thyroid just isn't producing at the level that it needs to. And mine was almost dead. The Crohn's, if you're not familiar, it's an intestinal disorder, and you're going to run to the bathroom like you've never run in your life. And there's probably going to be some bleeding involved. That wasn't the case with me normally, but definitely a lot of running to the bathroom. So in 2021, after recovering from a bout of COVID, my thyroid medication had run out, and my doctor couldn't re-prescribe without a visit. Well, the problem was I was doing a job down in Southern California in the Los Angeles area. Not easy to make a trip right back up to Oregon, 16 hours away or so, to go in for a visit so I could get to re-up my prescription. So I went without for, I don't know, a week and a half. And unbeknownst to me, my thyroid's TSH level had risen dramatically. Normal range for a TSH level is 0.4 to 5. I was at 65.5. I got to the doctor's office and was explaining to the scheduler I needed to see the doctor because here's where I'm at, here's what's going on. And I don't remember I remember seeing her and seeing her shocked. Terry remembers me on the phone talking with her. Not sure which which was reality at this point because, again, remember, my liver's kind of affecting my memory. And this is 21. She was horrified and relayed her story of being at 20 and being in a coma in the hospital. And here I am standing in front of her, and says, I'm going to shut the office down until the doctor sees you, and we're not accepting anybody else in here today until you're seen and you get prescribed. I look back at that, and I think that was the first time that I stopped and I thought, you know what? God's the one that's sustaining my life. He's not just the one that's the author of my life. He's not just the one that formed me in my mother's womb. He's also the one that's sustaining my life right now. I'm not in the hospital. I'm not in a coma. I'm standing here in the doctor's office. I think I'm in my right mind. I drove here to the doctor's office. I made it the whole way. And I thought, God is the one who's sustaining my life. And I need to recognize that, and I need to thank him, and I need to praise him for that. In January of 22, after recovering from another bout of COVID, I was hospitalized again for 8 days and was told that the Crohn's and the cirrhosis were getting worse. The blood numbers were all out of whack, and a hematologist was the one that was more or less put on point to try and work on getting my blood numbers back right. My hemoglobin and hematocrit numbers were way, way low. And for some numbers for you, my number was in the 5s, and the starting point for normal is 13. With hematocrit, my number was down at 21, and normal range starts at 36. Those are kind of dangerous and scary numbers. So he's working with me, and from a liver perspective, they look at a score. It's called MELD. I don't remember what the M stands for, but it's for end-stage liver disease. And they rank you. They take your specific liver numbers. You plug them into the system, and it tells you what the number is. The number goes from 6 to 40. 40 is bad. 6 is, hey, you're doing okay. You're not going to die today, probably. I was at 32, and that's as high as I ever got. And there were a few points where I was at 32. The doctors immediately wanted to get me transported to Portland for a transplant. And they were extremely concerned because of where my levels were. Well, there's one problem with getting to Portland. I hadn't taken the COVID vaccine. And if we're right, wrong, or indifferent, I had heard from a couple of doctors that for me and my condition, that it would probably put me in the ground. And I thought, that doesn't really make sense for me to take it. I'm not going to do it. And I know some of you did, and that's okay. And for a variety of reasons, and that's fine. We're not talking about Mark of the Beast here, where you take it and we love that about Florida, by the way, that you have medical freedom here. You don't have to go and get a vaccine. You don't have to have a vaccine to be seen at a hospital. At Shands up here up the road, they were willing to see me. They were willing to give me an evaluation even for whether or not I could get a transplant without having been vaccinated for COVID. OHSU would not even consider me. It was one phone call, and that was it. And they weren't willing to. I had doctors come into my hospital room saying, look, you really got to get this. One doctor, he was the hospitalist, came in and he was in tears and was like, you got to do this. You got to do it. I had nurses coming in that were just crying. You need this. You got to take this. I had no peace about it. No peace at all about it. It wasn't a mental thing. It was something that I just felt I couldn't do. I didn't know why. Terry and I talked about it. We prayed about it together. And I just couldn't do it. And that was just for me. And this is the point where Terry had started a blog on a site called Caring Bridge. Maybe some of you have heard of it before. So we started posting to Caring Bridge what was going on with me, with my health, what was going on, and we started to see God's hand working, and very visibly. At this same time, I was diagnosed with a condition called hepatorenal syndrome. And essentially what that means is your kidneys are failing because your liver is failing. And it's not reversible. You get a transplant, it's still not reversible. You get a kidney transplant, well, okay, that's different. We mentioned it to people, and I'll tell you this. If you have acute hepatorenal syndrome, your life expectancy is about 2 weeks. If you have chronic hepatorenal syndrome, you might have 3 months to 6 months. And we ask people to pray. In April of 22, I was hospitalized again after a visit to my primary care doctor. Oh, I do need to say this as well. So this was back in March. Because neither my wife or I had received the COVID vaccine, she couldn't come into the hospital, right? She could get to the front desk, and they could ask her, have you been vaccinated? Nope. This is the end of the road. And I know there have been a number of people where that's been the case around the country. And it's a hard spot to be. It's a hard spot to be for a spouse when her husband goes in, and they give you the, hey, you know what? You've got 3 months. 3 months is what they told me at that time. A team of doctors came in and said, you know what, you've got 3 months to live. That's it. When you hear the death sentence again, he replied with the same thing that I did the first time. I appreciate where you're coming from. I appreciate what you're saying. I know it's not easy to tell a patient, you've got 90 days. It's not easy to say, but I need to tell you that you don't get to number those days. There's one who sits on a throne in heaven who numbers my days, and he can shorten or extend my days as long as he pleases. He's the only one who knows my days, and I thank him for that. Went back in April, was hospitalized again. I went in to go see my primary care doctor to have some fluid removed. One of the things with liver disease is you build up what's called ascites in your stomach usually, and you go in and you have what's called a paracentesis, and they pull that out. Well, I didn't really have ascites badly, but before I could go in and even consider having the paracentesis, he said, we need to draw blood, take a look and see where you're at, because they won't do a paracentesis without it. And turns out I got to go make another trip to the hospital, and this time for 3 days. And I told him, look, you've got only 3 days to get me out of here, because in 5 days I'm flying to Florida to go and have an evaluation for my liver for a transplant. And they were a little surprised that I would say that, but here's the thing. I knew that we needed to come because God had closed so many other doors. And this was the door that was open. And we felt like, okay, that's the door, we got to walk. And, at the time, we didn't really know how that was all going to work out, right? It's not an expensive trip to come out to Florida for a week. Or in this case, if you guys were to come out to Oregon for a week, fly out, rent an Airbnb, rent a car, and then submit yourself to 65 different tests, a huge number of interviews with people from all over the roadmap of the medical world, as well as financial and social work, and you name it. They need to see that you're okay, that you're going to be able to accept a transplant. Not long afterwards, they gave us a call back and said, hey, you know what, we're willing to approve you for a transplant, but we need one more thing. We need you to go in and have another heart scan because we're a little bit concerned. Your brother passed away on an operating room table because his heart failed, and it was his third transplant. It was to be his third liver transplant. You don't normally get a second. You never get a third. He had been approved for a third, and he didn't make it through. But because of his condition, they said, you know what? We want to take a look. We just need that guarantee that you're going to make it. So they approved it. We decided, yep, we got to do this. So on June 24th, my mom came over to Central Oregon. We began driving our van out here from Oregon. We got here on July 1st, and we were here on July 3rd, began the process of getting on the transplant list, was approved for the transplant list on the 7th. My wife and Lindsay flew out here on the 4th of July, picked them up at the airport, and it was fantastic to have everybody there. But consider this too. It was difficult for me going through all of this, and a trial of faith for me. But my mom and dad have been married for 54 years this year. My sister had been married for almost 3 years, and they're committing to 3 months away from their spouses to be with me while I recover. That's essentially what happened. We didn't think it would be 3 months, but they were committed to seeing me through the transplant and being able to be there with me post-transplant to help me recover, get me to the hospital if need be. Because my wife teaches online. She's not able to go and just carry me here and there. And when she's got a classroom of kids that are looking at her through a computer screen, or that she needs to be on the phone with parents or whatever, she's not able to do that. And we understood that. So my mom and sister came out with me, and what a huge blessing for them. But consider the faith required for them to come out, seeing my brother, my parents' oldest son, pass away during the same kind of transplant. That's a hard thing. It's a hard thing for a parent to watch, I'm sure. I've never seen such a thing for myself, and I probably never do, and none of you ever do. But I can't imagine being in that spot. August 16th, about 5:30 p.m., the phone call. I get a phone call. Hey, this is Cheryl calling from UNOS. UNOS is the organization that handles organ transplants. And hey, we've got a liver available for you. She walks me through the questionnaire. On the phone, 15, 20 minutes. She said, at the end, she said, you know what? Go ahead and report to Shands at 8 p.m. And we'll get the ball rolling and start from there. So we've got a little bit of time. There were no eating restrictions, so we ate a nice dinner at home, and on our way up to the hospital, it turns out that the next day was transplant day. It didn't actually end up being the 16th. It was the 17th, the morning of the 17th. I don't remember even them in putting the IV in. I just remember going in, putting on the gown. They connected me up to this thing that blows warm air on you. If you've been in the hospital, you know what I'm talking about. It's something bare. I always call it the snuggly bear. I don't know what it's actually called, but it warms you up, and it sure is great, especially when your liver and thyroid aren't functioning properly and you're freezing all the time. It's such a blessing. Terry sat in the waiting room, the operating room's waiting room, and my mom and sister traded off, one of them being at home with Lindsay, because if you're under 18, you can't be in the hospital, and unless you're in the children's hospital. So they're at home trading places with my daughter. The procedure is supposed to take 5 to 6 hours. Mine took 8, and it wasn't an easy procedure. Removing the old liver was pretty easy, but connecting the new liver wasn't that hard. But once it was connected, they saw some things starting to go wrong. They noticed that the common bile duct that goes from my liver over to the intestines started to turn gray. The portal vein started to turn gray that comes from heart to the liver. They noticed my liver starting to turn gray and my intestines starting to turn gray. What does that mean? It means they're dying. There's no blood flow. And there's a very short window to be able to respond, and respond appropriately. And because it's not just any procedure that's going to work to bring those things, revive those things back to life. They knew the procedure. They executed the procedure. Things turned back the right color. But the common bile duct, they said, you know what? That's dead. We're going to throw that away. Cut it off, threw it away, plumbed me with a little drainage deal hanging off the side of me. At that point, I had 4 of them, 3 of them for blood and 1 of them for bile, because the bile's not going anywhere at this point. My liver's working. It's kicking out bile, but it's not going anywhere except into this little bag over here. And they decided that at that point that what they were going to do is a procedure called a Roux-en-Y anastomosis. And essentially what that means is they're taking the road and they're making a Y with it. So they're going to take my small intestine and they're going to peel a part of it over and create a new bile duct from small intestine to be able to funnel the bile over into the intestines to flush it out down to the toilet. I woke up that evening after the surgery, felt Terry's hand in my hand, and we have a manner of speaking by hands in our family that 3 squeezes means I love you. I remember waking up and squeezing her hand 3 times and having her squeeze back 3 times. And when you're intubated, you've got a breathing tube in. You can't speak, right? You have whatever communication is available, and 3 squeeze was all that was there. My dad flew in from from Oregon, and we were blessed to have him there. But this is a difficult time, and I knew it would be difficult for him, and I knew it would be difficult for my mom, having just lost my brother almost 3 years previous, and seeing another son going through the same process. On August 18th, the surgical team entered my room to review the surgery with us, tell us what happened, what the plan was. The head of transplantation did all of the talking, and he said, "What we did when we opened you up, we saw some things we didn't really expect, and they knew that I wasn't going to be an easy transplant because around my spleen, what they thought were varices or enlarged blood vessels. They weren't they weren't just enlarged blood vessels. They were collateral veins that were huge. I've never known a doctor to exaggerate, much less a surgeon, but what he showed us with his hands was they were this big. I don't know exactly. To me, you show something like that, that tells me that's how big around they were. I don't know if that's exactly the case, but even if it was half that, that's huge. He said the blood's going in places where it wasn't designed to go. And it was a case of replumbing inside that happened naturally. And I look at that, and I recognize God as my protector, and God as my sustainer, and God even as my healer. Because if that hadn't happened, if those things hadn't happened, I wouldn't have made it that far. I would have died on the road somewhere driving to a job or who knows where. But to be replumbed inside without anybody else's outside help, it's an amazing thing. There was one concern, because when things started to turn gray inside, that meant there were blood clots. And blood clots were something that now became an issue for me. And so they said, you know what, we're probably going to have you on blood thinners the rest of your life because you're hypercoagulable, meaning you're going to blood clot a lot. And we don't want this new transplant that's inside of you to clot and fail. And so in order to prevent that, we're going to have you on this medication for probably the rest of your life. Shortly after that, they recognized that there were two blood clots in the portal vein. And the portal vein, again, it's the one that goes from your heart down to your liver. They recognized there were two clots there, sizable clots, that would kill the liver. And so what do? We go and we posted on the Caring Bridge site, hey, folks, here's what's going on. Please be praying for us. And the next day they went and they did another scan. And the words they came back with were resolved. Not there. They're gone. Where'd they go? Right? They didn't go into my liver. They didn't go back up into my heart. They're gone. And we look at that, and I believe God was in that. I believe he heard our prayers. I believe that he answered those prayers. On August 19th, I was talking with the surgeon in my room and describing some of the sensations that I was feeling, and I felt full. That's the only way I could describe it. Like I had eaten the entire Thanksgiving dinner all by myself. Nobody else got any. I just felt full. Like there was nothing else that could fit inside of me. He was a little concerned, so they did an ultrasound, wheeled me down for a CT scan, and they decided, okay, you know what, we need to open you back up and see what's going on. So they did. They opened me back up, and they pulled out 4 liters of blood and cut out a lot of, or I should say cauterized a lot of blood clots. They removed a lot of blood clots from there. If you don't remember, 4 liters, that's about a gallon, right? A gallon of milk. That's about what they pulled out of me, a little bit over that. So they didn't close me back up entirely. They didn't staple me up at that point. They just sewed up the outside to try and let the inside muscle de-inflame, I guess you could say. And I'll be quick about this, but while I was in the ICU, I started having some dreams, and it's normal for people after having undergone a significant procedure start having hallucinations while in the ICU. And I did have some hallucinations, and they were real, real hallucinations to me. Filleting fish with my finger, Yep, I was doing that right there in my bed. No fish there, but I'm doing like this with my finger, filleting a fish, um, because my nurse wouldn't give me a knife. Who would think, right? But I can tell you some of the dreams that I did have were extremely real to me. And I look at some of those and I think, you know what? I think the Lord was talking to me in those. And one of them I remember, I was sitting in a spot in a little ravine, and I remember being overshrouded by something dark with wings looking down at me. And I remember seeing on the other side of this ravine, just seeing it light, and I remember seeing up above me angelic battle. And I remember hearing a voice saying, "Are you with me? Are you with me?" I said, "Yes, Lord." I knew it was the Lord speaking to me. I said, "Yes, Lord, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Whatever it is you want, I'm in there. I want that." And immediately, gone. The overshrouding gone, and it's light. And I don't know what happened in that moment, but that was very real to me. Not long after, I had another dream. Um, I had a similar dream where he said, "Are you with me? Will you follow me?" I said, "Yes, Lord, I will follow you." And another dream that I had, I found myself in a bright place, in a hallway, and down at the end of the hallway, I walked down, and it's bright inside this room, and this room has windows everywhere. And on this side, it looks like a jungle out here, a beautiful, beautiful jungle scene. And on this other two sides, it's white. And I see a group of men standing there talking amongst themselves. And at this time, there's a guy standing here wearing a white suit, and I recognized him. And it was my wife's uncle, Arlen, who had passed away the year previous during COVID. And he says, "Hey, Edward, what are you doing here already?" And at that point, I thought, what am I doing here? Um, he looked about 50, not 80. He wasn't in a wheelchair. And I didn't really recognize him as himself, but as he spoke to me, I knew it was him. And I said, I really don't know what I'm doing here. But if this is where the Lord wants me, then I'll stay here. But if the Lord wants me back there, I want to go back there. If it was my choice, I want to see my kids grow up. I want to see my kids get married. I want to see grandkids and be able to help raise those grandkids. I want to go and do whatever it is God's calling me to do. I don't know. If he wants me here, I'll stay here. If he wants me there, I'll go there. And I woke up, and my room was bright, and Terry was overhearing me talking. During a lot of these dreams, I was talking verbally what I was seeing, and they could hear me. And she overheard this conversation that I'm having with her Uncle Arlen, and she doesn't realize I'm talking with him. And she's like, "Is he going to wake up? Is this some spiritual battle that's going on here where is he like in heaven or something? I don't know. I'm not one that's going to say, I was dead, I was in heaven, and now I'm not, and here's what I saw. I don't know what the condition was. I just remember the dream, and I didn't see anybody except for Arlen and these guys that were talking. But and it was funny too. Literally seconds later, Pastor Corey walks in, and and he came in, prayed with us, and he and I went for a little walk down the hallway. But August 22 was slated to be my close-up surgery. The surgeons planned to do that Roux-en-Y anastomosis to reconnect. They did the work, washed me out. They removed a lot of blood clots. August 23rd, I was connected to what's called a CVVHD machine. If you're familiar with that, what it does essentially is it cleans out your blood and it pulls a lot of fluid off of your body. After having received 74 units of blood over the course of some time, I've got a lot of fluid sitting in me, right? And they needed to pull a lot of that off of me. It wasn't that much at that point, but there was a lot. So with that, it's going in through my neck, and the nurse looks over, and there's a massive air bubble that's headed my way. If you get an air bubble inside of you, you've got that's a death sentence. You get half of a milliliter of air in your heart, and you go into cardiac arrest. Um, if it gets to your brain, it's done. Got about a foot away from me, and she noticed, shut off the machine, and all of a sudden I'm surrounded by doctors and nurses, medical staff from all different stripes, and they start doing scans there in the room. Rush me down for another scan, a CT scan downstairs to see what's going on, where are things at. Turns out there was nothing inside of me, but I look at that moment, I think, you know what? God was in that moment. He got that nurse's attention at just the right time to shut that machine off. I wouldn't have noticed. Never would have known. Not until it happened. On August 27th, I was resting in my room. I'm sitting there with my arms in pillows, comfortable position. And keep in mind, my senses are all weird at the moment. I don't know what's real inside of my body, what I'm feeling. I'm feeling fizzes and bumps and weird things happening. But my arm feels like it's wet. It's kind of cool. At that moment, I look down, and my arm is sitting in a pool of blood. I have an arterial line, a line that's similar to an IV, but it's connected to an artery. And I'm pumping blood out into this pillow. And as my arm's sitting here, blood's up over the crease of my elbow. So I hit my call nurse button, and my dad runs out the hallway to find somebody. Hey, what's going on? Can we get this thing stopped up? I don't think it was a hospital problem. I think it was a manufacturing problem that got me to that spot. But I think God was in that moment that I had some clarity of mind to realize that that sensation wasn't normal, that that was something that was going to be damaging. Because I could have bled out if I just attributed that strange sensation. But I do want to leave you with a few things because I'm getting right there to the end of it. What did I learn through some of these things? First thing I learned was when you're in the middle of it, take your eyes off your circumstances and put them on Jesus. Take your eyes off your circumstances and put them on Jesus. And, it's easy to say that. But what does that mean? What does that look like? Sometimes it looks like this, right? It means going back to the Word and looking and seeing, who is God here? What's happening? And sometimes it looks like this. Lord, what's going on? Sometimes it's like this. God, I don't get it. Help. Sometimes you're in a hospital bed and you're laying down and you're sprawled out. God, I need you here in this moment. Help me to keep my eyes focused on you, because I can't do anything else. It's about taking your eyes off your circumstances and putting them on Jesus. And there are so many times in life where that's going to be the case. You lose your job unexpectedly. Your kids are going crazy and think you're going crazy. An engagement breaks off. Or you get a diagnosis that you prayed you wouldn't get. You're tempted to fall into whatever sin. It's taking your eyes off your circumstances and putting them on Jesus. Another thing I learned was don't fear, but trust God in the process. Maybe you've heard this before, but in Scripture, how many times does it say, do not fear? Interesting, 365 times. How many days in the year? Yeah, we've got one for each of them. Do not fear. There's only one time I can think of in Scripture where it says fear, to fear something. The only time I can think of is, do not fear the one who kills body only, but fear him who can destroy body and soul. And shouldn't that motivate us to live the lives that God called us to? We can always trust that he makes a means for the plans that he mans. If he has plans that he's going to put people into, he's going to provide a means for them to be able to go and accomplish that. And for us, moving out here to Florida, so many times we saw him open doors that we didn't realize he could open or that he would open. It happened over and over. Financially, it happened for us. To be able to get out here, it happened for us just being able to get to the hospital. Over and over, we saw it. And lastly, in all things, and it almost will sound redundant, but pursue Jesus. When we're doing the business of life, there's so many distractions, and oftentimes we put them in front of ourselves. And other times they come up as we're just driving down the road. But we do have full control over whether or not we're going to respond to those, right? Sometimes we have to climb a tree like Nicodemus to get a view of Jesus, don't we? Sometimes we have to pull a roof off to be lowered down to get a view of Jesus. Sometimes we have to push through the crowd to touch the hem of his robe. Sometimes we have to go and wash our eyes in the pool. Sometimes we have to take a step into the seabed where the impossible Red Sea was just moments before. Sometimes we have to step out of the boat into a stormy sea to go and pursue Jesus. So how do we do that? Again, sometimes it looks like this, right? Sometimes it's like this. Sometimes it's like this. You know, last week, I think we heard Josie mention, when we worship, there's no space for fear, right? We're in those moments of fear. When we worship, there's no space for fear in that. It's absolutely true. Absolutely true. How many times I was in that hospital bed laying there, and I'm just crying out in prayer and in worship, and grateful to God for all that he's doing. Let me close with this. Think about how God has been faithful to you. Where have his hands been involved that maybe you didn't recognize? Are you looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of your faith? Let me read to you from Philippians chapter 1, and this is to you, Jonesville Baptist Church. I thank my God upon all remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine for you, making my prayer with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. And I'm sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion until the day of Jesus Christ. It's right for me to feel this way about you all because I have you in my heart. For you all are partakers with me of grace. That's my sentiment as well towards you all here at JBC. You all are in my heart, and I pray for you all. As I see things come through realm, I'm praying for you all. I have you all in my heart. One last thing. 2 Peter 3:18. But grow in grace and in the knowledge of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. To him be the glory, both now until the day of eternity. Amen. Will you pray with me? Lord Jesus, thank you for being here in this place today. Thank you for your work in my life. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the lives of people here at Jonesville Baptist Church. Thank you for being the sovereign God who is over all and is in all. Thank you that when we're broken, you're there to heal and restore. You bind our wounds. You come and you heal. You make ways where we didn't see ways. Thank you. God, you're so good and so great and greatly to be praised, and we do praise you. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Brother Ed. Thank you. Would you all stand with us? Go ahead. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. What a joy it is to hear your life journey and to hear what God has done in you and through you in this amazing detail that you've given about every step of the way and how God was in it all. It's extraordinary, the one man to go through so much in one lifetime. And I want to ask you today if God's spoken to you through what he has shared with us today in any way. Maybe through what you've heard about how many times he was told on this journey, you've only got so many days to live. What if that was told to you? You confident about your eternity? Are you confident that what you have spiritually is good enough to go into the next life with. If it's not, the answer is Jesus, receiving him as your Savior, putting your trust in him. Because as Ed explained to us many times over in his journey, he had to realize and he had to explain to others, you're not the author of how many days that I have. And there's an appointment we must all keep. And none of us know when that day is coming. And so you can have peace beyond anything in this life if you give your heart to Jesus. So that when that day comes, it doesn't take you unaware. No matter what happens, you belong to him. Because the scripture says whether we live, we are the Lord's. Whether we die, we are the Lord's. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. We're his. Or are you going through something? Maybe God's spoken to you as a Christian through Ed's life and Ed's story. And you need to do what he said here. Look to Jesus. Call upon him.